So the final two questions that we asked folks were, what Forest Service values, if any, have been lost during your career? And, in your opinion, which values should be recaptured and carried into the future? J.R.R. Tolkien played a big part in inspiring me to get into conservation and join the Forest Service, so you'll see a couple of quotes from The Lord of the Rings on the next two slides. The Forest Service, at its best, embodies a noble mission. There's a sense of family, and it has courageous employees empowered to protect the resources that they love. In the early days of the Forest Service, this sense of mission was captured in the book, The Big Burn. I doubt if there has ever been such a wonderful job in the world as the early days of the Forest Service work. It was the most noble thing a young American could do to serve their country in the new century. There was another high watermark for the Forest Service right after World War II, and there was a Newsweek article that captured this in 1952. It was glowing of the Forest Service. It described a Forest Service person as someone who rises through the Forest Service as of a peculiar breed. They're a forester, a scientist, an accountant, an economist, a public relations expert, and something of a nomad. That same article said that politicians would rather turn on their own mother than be unkind to the Forest Service. That's how popular it was. And here we are, though, in 2018. Just last year, there was a government survey about which agencies folks would want to work for, and the Forest Service ranked 252nd out of 339. So we're not the top place to work in the government or the world anymore like we were in the 50s. We've made good progress. There's things that have changed for the better. We're more diverse, we're more inclusive, but some timeless values have been lost. We have in the past done a good job of developing career professionals who want to make their mark, who want to leave a legacy of benefiting the resource. And we've been losing that, as something that the interviewees mentioned. Part of this is we focus more on planning. And I worked in planning for 3.5 years, so it's interesting that when you ask folks, though, why they got into conservation, it wasn't for planning. We're not feeding the passion of specialists. We're not letting them pursue their first love, which is the resource. And the other thing interviewees mentioned is what they loved is when Forest Service employees were able to keep their pulse on the land, to be in the field with the resource. And that was and should again be central to the agency. Courageous leadership has been a hallmark of the Forest Service. In our first week of Middle Leaders, Shar Miller gave us an anecdote about Gifford Pinchot. At the time, the Forest Service wasn't always popular, but Pinchot went out west to Colorado to meet a group of people who did not like the federal government, did not like public land. They were angry, but he went out in person. He handled their questions. He dealt with their frustrations, and he told them his opinion of why public land management is important. He went in person to deal with this. And one of the things that came out of our interviews is that we Forest Service employees crave that kind of inspirational leadership. The Forest Service needs courage and be willing to speak the truth about what is needed to manage the land well. This may cost us in the short term, but in the long run, it's indispensable. And today, this is especially true around climate change, how we deal with fires, and how we fund recreation. The Forest Service has not always been courageous. We've sometimes let resources get damaged, and we're too concerned with political implications. I just started 2 months ago as a deputy district ranger, and this next quote from an interviewee hit me kind of hard. They said, people who need to be liked by everyone need to be in a different line of work, especially true of line officers and district rangers. We, as Forest Service leaders, will lose our moral authority if we don't deal with the important issues. And once lost, you cannot regain that moral authority. The mission of the Forest Service is deeply inspiring. To sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of the nation's forests and grasslands, to meet the needs of present and future generations, this mission is noble. It can bind us together as a family, and it calls on us to be courageous, to love and protect the land, and it is worth fighting for.